Ed Schafer grew up in South Carolina. His dad, also his role model, was a county administrator. Growing up, Ed was not particularly inclined to politics. As a people person, Ed loved psychology, so joined the Citadel to get his bachelor's degree in biology and psychology. After graduating, he backpacked around Europe and thoroughly enjoyed it. Ed came back from Europe and wanted to become a hospital administrator. The best path, Ed decided, was to earn a law degree in health law. What happened after he joined University of South Carolina School of Law? When did he decide to switch to government relations? And more importantly, why? Why does he have a passion for disability rights? Let's join Ed's personal journey in this next episode of State Lobbying Heroes. Hi, Ed. Thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Let's start off with a rapid fire set of questions. What is the one myth or misconception about lobbying?
I think the general misconception is it's all about whining and dining, and there is some of that, but as far as my career goes, I like to think of myself as an honest broker of accurate information. So as a lawyer, I like to think that I can educate legislators that have a lot on their plate in a quick, simple way, sometimes complicated legislation or ultimately new laws.
Okay. What would you be if you weren't a lobbyist?
A rock star.
Nice.
I wish. I don't really know.
You do
I
look
might
like
be
a rock
like
star.
a veterinarian or an animal behaviorist. I love animals.
Nice. You do look like a rock star, so you.
Well, we had a Chinese exchange student. He saw my long no cut since COVID and said, "You look like an artist or a musician." So.
Yeah, they're spot on. What are the 3 skills you think are essential for someone to be a good lobbyist?
I think you need to have good interpersonal skills. A good communicator would be number one, and I think you've got to kind of have a thick skin too, and a lot of times you may be pushing legislation, and the legislators have a lot of different dynamics or variables at play, and so sometimes completely unrelated to the merits of a bill, your bill won't get passed. So I think you have to be a little bit, if you're real controlling and like to completely control your work environment, that could be frustrating. Also, too, I think it's just the ability to develop relationships and to have a relationship built on trust, to be straightforward and to be able to tell them, hey, this is why we need this legislation. If you're going to have opposition, go ahead and be upfront with them and say, here's the opposition, but here's the reasons we still think that we need that. So that would be my 3.
Okay. What is your favorite book or hobby?
That's 2 good questions. You just want me to answer one of them?
Either or.
Okay. The latest book I read was Boundaries. It's kind of a self-help book. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I have learned that it has become more popular during this COVID time. And so that was, been very helpful in my life. But also, just being a Citadel grad, I love Pat Conroy books. He has a way of writing things. I love the low country and the coast, and he's so descriptive in the way he writes. I could never put things like he does, but I can say, yes, that's the feeling I had when I was there, or the smell I had, or whatever, you know. So the late, great Pat Conroy is my favorite author.
Excellent. What inspires or motivates you to be doing what you're doing?
Well, currently at Turner Pageant, I've it's not the way I started lobbying, but I have developed somewhat of a niche or clients around disability rights. And it has been so inspiring to see some of these organizations and the people that I work with disabilities that have overcome so many barriers and obstacles, and to be able to be their voice and help them get bills passed has just, it's been the most rewarding aspect of my career at this point.
Do you have any role models in your life?
My dad, who died of lymphoma in 2011, was certainly a role model, and I miss him so much. And I'm a Christian, so I'll try to live by Jesus' standards. So those two would be the first two that would come to mind.
Excellent. So with that, let's jump into your past. How was your childhood? Did you grow up in South Carolina? Talk us through a little bit about, if there are any glimpses of you being interested in politics back then.
So I did grow up in South Carolina, and my dad was a county administrator. So he was in local government, and he went to American University, moved down. He's from Illinois, and he came, and his first job was in Rock Hill, South Carolina, which has changed so much in 40 years, all the growth from the Charlotte area, as you're familiar with. And I lived there for 7 years. I learned as a county administrator, you're usually not there more than 10 or 11 years, just dealing with the county council and that kind of thing. So then we moved to Florence and then Hartsville. So if people ask me just a quick question, where are you from? I say Hartsville because I went to high school there. And that's in the PD. And my dad and I have very different personalities, but I admire him so. He was such a hard worker, and he was very interested in politics and really wanted to go to law school, but just kind of life got in the way and he never did. He never pushed me to go to law school. My mom actually had pushed me, like saying, you're good in math and science, you need to be a doctor or an engineer. So I got a full scholarship to the Citadel and was a biology major. I love psychology. And wanted to do that, but my mom said, well, what you gonna do as a psychologist? You can't do anything that way. But I found that has been helpful in my career, just that interest there in corporate psychology and that kind of thing. So that, did I answer all of your questions there? I kind of got rambled a little bit. Let me know if what I left out.
Yeah, there are no rules here. So yeah, I guess so in the schooling, were you interested in debates, or were you part of any student body or anything like that?
So I've always been a people person, and but my dad, just being in the South and having to work with county councils, one thing that I learned my first start with the South Carolina Association of Counties in the lobbying is, local government for the most part is nonpartisan. So he tried to keep politics out of it, and he also was very much wanted us to come to our own conclusion in regard to politics. So didn't try to, and I'm thankful for that, influence us or tell us we should be Republican or Democrat or that kind of thing. When I'm working with local governments, they would always say, there's no Republican or Democrat way to pick up trash, and so that is, I think I wasn't really that politically inclined as much. I was kind of got the science math track. And then when I graduated the Citadel, I backpacked around Europe that summer, which was a wonderful experience, and came back, knew I was going to go back to school for something. Was kind of thinking about medical school. Um, and then got interested in like health administration, thinking maybe health law, and directed a pediatric early literacy program. And I had some wonderful volunteers, and then I became a guardian ad litem. And so that is really what led me to law school, because I thought, well, I could, if I want to be like a hospital administrator, I could do that with as a JD, and it would open up so many doors for me. So I kind of went to law school thinking maybe like health law. And then that's when the lobbying job, when I was about to graduate, presented itself to me with the South Carolina Association of Counties. Didn't really know much about it. And I thought, well, there are a bunch of lawyer legislators. I could always kind of get back in the traditional practice of law if I wanted to. I love working with people, and I feel like one thing I did when I went to law school kind of had the idea of, I feel like I could appeal to the salt of the earth type folks, maybe sixth grade education, average member of a jury. I can communicate this simply and be persuasive. And so, of course, as a lawyer or as a lobbyist, maybe I should have said that was one of the three top qualities of being a lobbyist, is persuasiveness, because at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to get them to do, is persuade them to vote yes on your piece of legislation.
Mm-hmm. So after your high school, what made you pick the Bachelor of Science in Biology and then psychology? What were you, I know you said you were interested in science and math, but was that like a natural pick that you said, okay, let me just try out biology and psychology? Is that how you picked it?
Well, I started out in biology. Like I said, I had a full scholarship to the Citadel and went in the honors program. And I really, being from the PD, I was kind of country boy from a rural school. I did graduate number 3 in my class, but for boys, it was kind of like not cool to like take books to class and that kind of thing. I read the Cliff Notes of the classics. And then I got into the honors program, and I was like, oh man, this is like country come to town. All these kids have actually read the classics and done all that. So I had to change my mindset to a love to learn. And that's really what I did at the Citadel. And I did like science. I found myself navigating more to the ecology, ornithology, that kind of thing, as opposed to the organic chemistries. And I didn't really want to be around sick people all the time, and just the ins and outs of medicine wasn't quite as appealing to me. So that's when I kind of discovered psychology and really loved that. But then, like I said, just was a minor, and I probably was too influenced by my mom when she said, you can't do anything with that. Don't do anything with that. And it's the old school mentality, like, psychologists and psychiatrists were not as accepted as they are now, I think.
Mm-hmm. So looking back with your bachelor's degree and now with your experience, with all the experience and wisdom you have as a lobbyist, do you see that you getting that degree is helpful with your current job?
Well, as far as the specifics of the science classes that I took, probably not real helpful. But of course, the Citadel in South Carolina and the Southeast has been so instrumental, so fundamental to my success in my career. The Citadel has such a network, and then when you become a lawyer, the Citadel Lawyer Network, I mean, I can about thank every opportunity I've had in the lobbying world to my Citadel education. And then I'm hopeful too, some of my love for science. Of course, there are a lot of associations. Really, about every special interest has a lobbyist, and so a lot of medical associations. And so I feel like my background in science can be helpful with a variety of those type of associations, and even in the disability rights context.
Interesting. So after your bachelor's degree, I see that you graduated in 96, and then there was a 4-year hiatus, right? So what happened during that term?
Well, like I told you, I backpacked around Europe that summer. I was ready to have a little break from the Citadel military college there, and that was a wonderful experience. We met friends and stayed in hostels, met a group with a humanitarian project, doctors and nurses and teachers from Charleston, met them in Romania. So it was such a wonderful trip. Got back in Charleston and worked with the Medical University, Department of Family Medicine, wrote some 6-digit grants for them. And that's what I mentioned briefly before. I was kind of on because I had that Bachelor of Science in Biology, I'd kind of shifted. I got a summer undergraduate fellowship program opportunity. Then I published an article in a medical journal on computer-based patient records. So I had begun to kind of shift my focus into hospital administration type things. And so working at the medical university, really kind of wanted to stay in Charleston. I had this opportunity to direct this new program with pediatric early literacy. It's called Reach Out and Read South Carolina. Their national headquarters were in Boston. So it was just wonderful, but it was kind of a circuitous path I took to law school. I had that wonderful experience. And then with the great volunteers, got me being the guardian ad litem, looking out for the best interest of children. And I thought, why not go to law school? And, there's no majors in law school, so you just kind of go, and it opens up a lot of doors, and it opened up the lobbying door for me.
Okay, so those 4 years, so before you joined the law, do you think you taking that break helped you in a way to actually streamline your goals? Do you recommend that everyone should take a break after a bachelor's degree if they wanted to get into law school, or take the next step?
Well, not necessarily. I think certainly had a lot of friends that went straight into law school, kind of knew they wanted to go to law school all along, and that was their goal. And like you mentioned, most of them were political science majors, they were on that track. For me, it just, I guess, took a little more time to realize that's what I was interested in and wanted to do. I will say, it helped. I certainly am glad that I had those years, and I think it did help me appreciate those times in law school, like kind of going back to school. I had worked, had gotten great experience, but going back to school to me was fun. I feel like some of those folks that had gone 4 years and then straight into law school, you could risk getting burnt out or not appreciate it as much. For me, after those working days, like law school was tough, but it's also, you had flexibility, you're learning, you're around a bunch of interesting, inspiring people from very different backgrounds. It made me more appreciative, I guess, and probably more dedicated as well. Not that I was a model law student, but I will say too, that I think I was more intentional. I still have so many great friends from law school, and now I'm 46 years old, and a lot of those wonderful friendships that I developed back then, they're senators, representatives, state agency directors. So it's really helped me in my career.
So, so it looks like you already were in the healthcare domain, and then you wanted to fine tune it a bit by getting the law degree. So do you recommend any specific courses which helped you when you're getting your law degree?
Well, obviously, like if you're asking if you want to go into lobbying.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think now, of course, in USC we have a wonderful new facility they really learned from the old building that I was in back from 2000, 2003. And I think legal education, law school has changed a lot for the good. And they have many more options of things that you can take. But obviously, any kind of public policy, legislative classes they offer were key. I started clerking for the South Carolina Association of Counties, that I think they tapped me in law school because of my Citadel degree. And so with my dad being in local government, I had never, I mean, he always kind of seemed miserable having to deal with county council. So that was probably another reason that I went like the science math way, because I was like, I don't want to do what he does. And then it was wild how when the Association of Counties offered me the job, my dad, who was kind of always gives me the other side of things that I wouldn't have thought about, says, I don't know if you want to do that. I think he really wanted me to be a trial lawyer so he could be like my investigator or something. But I had grown up going to the conferences that he would go to there, and I think he just wanted me to make sure I was making the right decision and accepted that. So I took local government law there too, once I had started working with the Association of Counties. So yeah, as far as the lobbying goes, it is a very much a niche profession, and you know, I find it was law school that opened the door for me to lobby. But you don't have to be a lawyer to be a lobbyist, as you know. But a lot of the folks, they were either pages when they were in college to kind of get some connections with committees and that kind of thing, or their dad was a legislator, which, you know, I'm sure Landry communicated with you there. So, you know, not necessarily dad, it could have been the mom, but somebody had some kind of inside the political track and knew that, you know, had some kind of connection to get them a job.
Mm-hmm. So while you were getting your degree, you said you got your first position with SCAC, Association of Counties. How did you end up in that position? Did you apply for it, or how did you know that this is something you wanted to try?
So they actually reached out to me when I was in law school and asked me. I'm sure that, you know, I'm sure they knew my dad, who had been a county administrator, and then they had a tendency to hire Citadel guys. And so I'm not real sure whether it was my Citadel connect, and maybe it was a combination of both. But it was something that I had not contemplated. I was working for a big plaintiff's firm, a trial lawyer kind of deal. And when they offered me the job, I wasn't sure what to do. I was tempted, like I said, feeling like I would enjoy going in front of a jury. And as far as a plaintiff lawyer, you have that possibility of the $1 million case, you know? So it's like, you know, that was kind of tempting to me. But then it was, when I was third year of law school, it was ultimately the South Carolina Association of Counties said, hey, if you take this job, we'll pay you the salary while you study for the bar. And it just seemed like a more solid foundation to start in fresh out of law school, you know?
Mm-hmm. And what were your responsibilities with them?
So they had about 10 lawyers, about 5 of us lobbied, and they break it down into different steering committees to develop their policy positions. And so I was the chair of the Land Use, Natural Resources, and Transportation Steering Committee. So they go through a process in the fall developing policy positions. And so they have a kind of a proactive agenda where they can tell legislators as bills are introduced, well, our membership has adopted this policy position, and here's our stance on it.
Interesting. And you were there for about 5 years. And what happened after that position? You see that you moved on to Municipal Association of South Carolina. How did you get that
Yes.
position? And talk us through a little bit of your experience there.
Yeah. So that was another Citadel blessing. The executive director was a Citadel guy at the Municipal Association. So he reached out to me. His general counsel and his lobbyist were leaving the association. So the lobbyist actually reached out to me because I had developed a relationship with him when I was with the county association, asked if I'd be interested. And so basically they named me legislative counsel there. The guys at the county association gave me a hard time going, to me, I felt like, well, to me, it was interesting because you got 46 counties in South Carolina and you had like 10 lawyers at South Carolina Association of Counties. Then you got Municipal Association, you had 271 municipalities, and it was one lawyer, which was me, and I was the legislative counsel. So that was a different dynamic. The different thing that they did too, they both have about 50 employee associations, and I don't know really which one's better. They both have their strengths and weaknesses, but Municipal Association, their advocacy team, you had different kind of like marketing folks, you had some folks from city administration type roles, so you had like a diverse mix of folks. And most of what I did was lobbying, and we would hire contract lawyers to do some different stuff. So I was real comfortable and loved the job at the South Carolina Association of Counties, and my law partner, that's where he came from as well. It to me was just a challenge. It was the challenge of going to a municipal association, and I also had thought from my experience with the county association that we should have done a better job at the State House of working with other local government associations, including the Municipal Association and the school associations. There's a lot of those, all three local governments. And my thoughts were, we need to have a better working relationship with each other so we could go as the big three local governments in tandem to the State House and have more influence there. Because unfortunately, even a lot of the state legislators that start as a city council or county council or on the school board, their political journey, they forget their roots a little bit when they get to the State House, and then it's this power struggle. And so that's part of the problem with county and municipal association too, is both on the state level and in the local government level, like a city and the county that the city's in, there's kind of some turf battles.
And so after your Municipal Association of South Carolina, you then moved on to as a general counsel and director of government affairs with the Manufactured Housing Institute of South Carolina. So how did you find that position?
I'm trying to. I think actually the general counsel that was there, he was in law school with me, and he went to work for the Department of Transportation, and so he reached South Carolina Department of Transportation. He reached out to me and told me about that opportunity. I think why they were interested in me is because I had that local government experience, and a lot of what they do is work with counties and municipalities for zoning type issues. So that association was very different than both of the large local government associations. And I learned so much about manufactured and modular housing. It was quite the interesting experience. And so, yeah, it was wonderful. And then to go ahead and transition, if your next question is how I ended up in MPA strategies, that was my next career move, which I have gotten a lot of. I really appreciate having all this variety of experience. I had a good friend, a lobbyist. She had actually done some contract lobbying when we were at a municipal association. And she said that she was kind of interested in getting out of lobbying and had a couple of clients that she needed somebody to lobby for. So I talked with manufactured modular house director and asked, could I take this on as a contract and then pick up the other clients here on a contract basis? And so it really was a seamless transition and helped me get into the contract lobbying, which I just love, and gave me exposure to my first disability rights client, which was Able, South Carolina. They promote independence for people with disabilities. And I was able to, like the first year, I think, when I came on board with them, pass this bill that allowed people with disabilities to parent. If you can believe, our South Carolina laws were so archaic that there was actually provisions in the law that could take away children, terminate parental rights for a parent with a disability. So yeah, we had to work with the judiciary committees and South Carolina Bar and all that, because when you're taking a tool out of a judge's toolbox or any kind of change, there were all these these scenarios that people would bring up to not make this change. But all the stars aligned. We got the governor to sign the bill, and my client, Able, South Carolina, thought that I'd hung the moon. And I tried to tell them, I was like, well, we were fortunate because a lot of times, like I said earlier, things could really get stalled outside of the merits of the bill, and other things that are going on in the General Assembly can affect your bill getting passed. So I wanted them to have reasonable expectations moving forward. Like, sometimes it takes a long time to get a bill passed because, I've heard it said maybe like 8 to 10 years, just like educating, getting legislators on board, and just kind of working the different members and that kind of thing. It's much easier to kill a bill than it is to get a bill passed.
Yeah, that's what I hear. So, so given your experience up until this point, like before MPA strategies, if there were one or two skills which you gained with all your experience with the Association of Counties, Municipal Association, and the Manufactured Housing Institute, if there was one or two skills which you gained from that experience, what would those be, which has helped you in your current position?
I think it gets back to communication. Would be the first one, just being communicating the different dynamics. Communication would be first. The second would be just the experience of knowing how the process works. Knowing, I often say too, we learn the most from our failures. So, you see things, sometimes you think like the simplest bill would be the easiest to pass and be the hardest one, because legislators are like, what am I missing here?
Yeah.
This seems too simple. So, I think truly it was just the actual experience of seeing what things worked and what things didn't, and then learning how to develop strategies. Also, too, I think it's so important, to, as I said earlier, honest brokers of accurate information. I think there's a fine line. You want to be persuasive and convince them to pass what you want passed. But that comes with the caveat of you don't want to be, and I think some lobbyists can fall in this trap, is to kind of gloss over, this has at least been my philosophy, gloss over some information or not communicate everything the bill would do. You might kind of pull the wool over their eyes for that bill, but I'll tell you, if you burn that bridge or make them feel like you weren't completely forthright with them, it's going to hurt you in the long run, you know? So I've certainly seen that played out.
So with all the experience you've had working for independent organizations and now in the world of contract lobbying, if someone who's listening to this and they're trying to get into this field, would you recommend they go down the same path as you did? Like, try it out first with an organization and then the contracting lobbying world, or what would you recommend?
That my path has been very helpful to be able to give my clients advice, but because it's such a unique profession, I would recommend kind of however way they could get in. I mean, another, I think, very beneficial path, and I've seen a lot of lobbyists go down this track, is to become either a staff attorney or a staff member for one of the committees at the State House, because you make a lot of friends with legislators. You learn about the inner workings of, I think that's how Lambda really got to start too. The inner workings of kind of behind the scenes of making laws and legislators, and then that translates to lobbying firms wanting to hire you because you have those connections. So that may be one of the best tracks, really. I mean, like I told you, mine was a little rare because I think kind of the Association of Counties sought me out from a Citadel background, and it kind of just fell from the sky a little bit. So I don't know. I don't know if my path is necessarily one to model after or not.
That's true modesty, I guess. With that, thank you so much, Ed, for taking this wonderful time of yours and giving it to me and our listeners. Thank you again for being here. I hope we can meet sometime soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Deepak.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode with Ed Schafer. Let's educate the public on the role of government relations through your support of this podcast. Please do rate the podcast on your favorite platforms. Until next time, take care.